Hello and welcome to the Satluj TV podcast. My guest joining us once again today is a former president of the Sikh Youth of America, former president of one of the largest Gurdwaras in California, and the founder of the Sikh Information Centre, the Organisation for Minorities of India, and the Sovereign Star Publishing Company. But he's also been a prolific author with published titles including Faces of Terror in India, Demons Within, Cultural Malware, and Kite Fights, amongst many others. Bhajan Singh Bhinder, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh to Scott and also the Satluj family. Thank you for having me here.
A pleasure as always, Bhajan. Now, Bhajan, the war that India seems to be raging against the Sikh community has seemed to have stepped up a gear, maybe as they realise that the Khalistan movement is, or at least on the face of it, gaining enormous popularity and momentum, both within Punjab and across the diaspora. Now, India's actions historically against the community have been pretty shocking, to put it mildly. And we do seem to be entering a new era as they become increasingly desperate to close down the Khalistan movement. Now, today's discussion is going to look at India's track record against Sikhs and what it could imply for the future. Well, you've just returned from an important conference in Switzerland where the young were invited to share their views. Could you perhaps tell us how the conference went?
The conference went actually very well, and it was held in Langenthal Gurdwara. And the important the important part of this place is that this is like the Gurdwara of the people, for the people, by the people. And in that, what I mean is the Sikhs who protested the arrest of Sant Bhajan Singh Bhinder in 1981, there has been a precedent in India when Indira Gandhi was briefly arrested. Two of her close aides hijacked a plane to protest, and later Indira Gandhi rewarded them with high office positions. So the Sikhs wanted some attention on the arrest of Sant Bhajan Singh Bhinder in 1981 on trump of false charges. And later we came to find out that he was very innocent of all the crimes that were put on him for the reason for his arrest. So to protest that, young Sikhs, Master Karan Singh and Gajinder Singh, they hijacked a plane to protest Sant Bhinder's arrest. So after spending, there's another gentleman who also followed them in 1984 to protest the attack on the Golden Temple and did another hijacking. And all this youth of that time, they are now elderly, like me. They are the people who finally, after spending over a decade in Pakistan jails, and I did visit them in 1992 when I went to visit Pakistan. I did visit them in the jail, and I have a relationship with this group of people, and they're proudly called hijackers. So these people, after decades of prison, they found refuge in Switzerland, and they built a Gurdwara there, and then their kids were born there, and they inspire other kids who were born in Germany, Portugal, Spain, all these countries, and all the youth got together. So the origins of the conference is a very unique and very successful, that the baton has been passed on to the next generation. And the conference was definitely very exciting, and they wanted to learn more from the past experiences as how to apply them to future strategy for our sovereign nation's fight for Khalistan.
And did you find the young were very receptive to the stories from the older generations? Because of course the young they tend to be more interested in modern things, whether it's a screen to look at. They're not really, as a whole, they're not very interested in history and things that might have happened before. Did you find, being part of the Sikh community, that they were very receptive to understanding and learning the horrors really that occurred in the 1980s and the 1990s?
Yes, that's the reason when they heard about my book that was released both in Punjabi and English. It's called the Kite Fights, the proxy wars behind the Kabul Gurdwara massacre. and also a series of research papers. They combined these research papers that we had called the Faces of Terror in India. When they found out about this, they quickly wanted us to be there. And they also invited Mr. Bhajan Singh from UK, whom we have seen regularly. And they also find the Khalsa 8 Ravi Singh to be very inspirational. So they invited a host of people, including the mayor for Langenthal, the city in Bern, the capital of Switzerland, and who is going to be a minister of high portfolio. So it was a very well represented group, especially the number of females that took a leading role in this. The state secretary was a female, and they were very precise. They did not entirely want to just be victims of the past. They wanted to learn the deeper values of the fight and what's the meaning of the struggle of their parents and others who like me, who followed immediately after 1984 our activities. So definitely it was kind of a razor pointed, purposeful desire for them to not only learn but also to inform the Sangat and the Swiss and the European community, and they are expecting to have a lot of follow-ups on this literature to be translated in German and other languages.
And I guess one of the big areas of discussion at the conference would, of course, we've talked about the 1980s, but specifically the genocide of 1984 and the years that followed. And of course, tens of thousands of young Sikhs were murdered subsequently in the 1980s. But I guess the topic of genocide did come up in the conference.
Yes, that is actually, you can't escape. The Sikhs have to start with the genocide of 1984. And one thing that I pointed out was there are genocides that did happen, like, for example, the June 1984 attack, the whole setup of it since 1980 to have a massacre of the Sikhs in June 1984. That is a realized genocide. Another realized genocide, semi-realized genocide, was the post-Indira Gandhi assassination, where they had a pre-planned plan to kill Sikhs dating back almost from 1980. All these plans are dating back from 1980. So in the case of the Operation Shanti, which we have covered numerous times, that is an unrealized genocide that they had. They wanted to kill millions of Sikhs, but by the grace of the Akal Purkh and the Almighty, that they couldn't realize that. So genocides not only we were discussed, and this is to the credit of the Swiss kids, that they were not only wanted to learn about the past genocides, but those genocides that were unrealized, and also learn from these genocides. Are there plans to have more genocides of the Sikhs in the future, and what can the youth do today to thwart them, to warn the world, and whatever they can do to see how they can minimize the threat and also prevent it altogether.
And of course, we have seen that many nations go to great lengths to achieve, let's say, their international aims, which are not always, let's say, totally moral. And for example, if we put it in the context of other nations, the United States has often been criticised itself for some fairly questionable tactics to justify, for example, the Iraq War and things like this. And of course, we put this in context of what India are capable of, as we have reported on. Could you talk about perhaps some of the context of what nations in the past have been capable of and what they will do to justify what they're trying to do, to justify their means and their ends?
We have seen the almost 21 years ago when the United States invaded Iraq, and Colin Powell, one of the most respected statesmen he's an African American, he's a minority, he's the first person to be the Secretary of State, the Chief of the Army Staff, huge portfolio, and he went to the United Nations and told the world, this is one speech actually that defined the world opinion against Saddam Hussein, and he said that the Iraqi leader has weapons of mass destruction. In 1 hour address to the United Nations, he mentioned WMDs 17 times. That this man is so insane that he could use weapons of mass destruction. He has used them before. So this led to the invasion of Iraq, and now you can see that the area has been in turmoil ever since. And 400 and I think almost over 40,000 U.S. lives were lost, and so many other displaced, millions displaced. And then the world came to find out there was no such thing as WMDs. There was no weapons of mass destruction. And Colin Powell later admitted that, hey, you know what? I was told to do this. I was a hack. What do you want me to do? I was the most honest person, a voice they can trust, and they put me up to it. But in India's case, this is not an attack on another country. We are planning this kind of WMDs scenarios. They are trying to create fear, specifically geared towards the Hindu majority population and targeting the tiny minority, the Sikhs, as the people who are terrorists, who want Khalistan, and they are willing to use weapons of mass destruction of that times. And you can see in that context, we have to learn from these experiments, and we have to be very cautious, and how nations operate, but more importantly, how ideologies operate to suppress, in this case, the Sikh ideas, Sikh philosophy. That is the main reason that they created such scenarios of attacks on the Sikhs.
And one thing that I think we all learned from the Iraq War, and I think even at the time many of us could see straight through the propaganda that was being hugely spread across Western media to somehow justify the invasion of Iraq at that time. And even when Colin Powell did make that speech, many people said this is just clearly propaganda. It really clearly did not reflect the truth. Yet it was very clear that the Western press went along with the story, they went along with the narrative. And one of the lessons that we learned is they who control the press control the narrative. And of course, many people did align with the idea that, yes, we need to invade Iraq because clearly they do have weapons of mass destruction. And it was quite shocking to even people like myself to see so many people so easily manipulated by clear propaganda. But that is the nature of humanity. What is very noticeable in India, certainly today, but certainly even back in the 1980s, is that this same tactic was used by Indira Gandhi's government. She controlled the press and therefore controlled the narrative. She basically wrote history, she rewrote history, and she rewrote the history of the Punjab according to her narrative, her perspective. Can you talk us through Indira Gandhi and her government tactics at that time, how they basically created this narrative that somehow that Indira Gandhi was in the right and the Sikhs were in the wrong?
Yes. In fact, Indira Gandhi had laid out her re-election strategy in 1980. And part of the re-election strategy, which was in coordination and, you can say they're partners in crime with the USSR, Russia, for geopolitical reasons. And their goal was to wreck Punjab at any cost and to use the already anti-Sikh Hindu mind, which has been anti-Sikh for centuries. So the Hindu mind, I'd like to spend a little second here. In the 1920s, a song was put out by the Bhajan Singh's uncle, Ajit Singh, who wrote a song, Pagdi Sambhal Jatta Pagdi Sambhal. Save your honor, save your turban, or the farmer, the Kisan, save your turban. This song song ran, every household played the song. And the turban was about the peasants and their struggle across the India against the British control of agriculture and products and whatnot. So to counter this song of Pagadi Sambal Jatta, the Hindu Mahasabha, the pre-Hindutva, hard Hindutva, they came up with their own song, and he said, "Toti Sambal, Hindu Toti Sambal, save your loincloth. O Hindu, save your loincloth." Now, this is reported in the Straits Times News of India. It must have been a very big story, that these ideological differences of this nature. But it tells you the schisms, the frictions, the tectonic plates that rub against each other, that anything to do with the turban, the upliftment of society, empowering the poor, had to be countered with the Hindu feeling insecure and threatened. So if you bring this thinking to today's level, Indira Gandhi has very well manipulated the psyche of the Sikhs. And she has laid out in the white paper exactly why the Punjab was attacked, and she set up a false narrative. And even after her assassination, the narrative continued. For example, in May of 1988, we had the New York Times, the Mercury News of the Silicon Valley, India Abroad. They put a story out that the story was Sikhs have rockets. This is post Indira Gandhi assassination, when the son Rajiv Gandhi was in power. So Sikhs have got Stinger missiles. Sikh militants have rockets. Sikh militants are armed with the most dangerous and sophisticated weapons. So if you mentioned in 1988 Stinger missiles, the Sikh militants have been armed with Stinger missiles, that's in today's term is saying that we have ISIS in the United States and they have the dirty bomb. They have the nuclear waste to destroy everything here. That was the power of the word Stinger missiles in 1988. So this was put out all over the world in April 1988. And the whole purpose, as pointed out in this report, you can see, so the youth of that time, just like the youth of today in Switzerland, I was part of the Sikh American Information Centre. I want to salute my mentor, Mr. Ravinder Singh Shergill, who is no longer with us, and Mr. Kulwant Singh Sidhu, Sukhdev Singh. And this is the time where there were no computers. There was no fancy design. We had to go to Berkeley. We have to do, we have to go and dig up the newspapers. We have to go through the microfilms. We have to do everything to pick up all these stories and then write about them and then counter these stories with other narratives and other facts. So in this case, when they wrote that the Sikhs have Stinger missile, that was the narrative. Canada, America, France, everybody, Britain, they all bought this narrative. The Sikhs are dangerous. They are going to be shooting down aeroplanes that are going to fly over the Indian territory and all that. So we countered immediately, and that's why the Swiss Jews were very excited about the event. So we put out our own report. This news came in April 3rd, 1988. We immediately, the Sikh Information Centre, put out our report in a month later, in May 1988. The news came in April 1988. So we put out the facts. And the title of our report, Indian government reported planting weapons in Punjab. So in order to pass TADA and more draconian measures, and in order to justify to the world that they're going to send more dangerous weapons into Punjab to kill en masse, they created these false flag incidents. And this report, we clearly point out with facts, written facts, that are reported by another reporter, Mr. Dhiran Bhagat, who put out an independent report that these rockets that happen, and he put it out much later, that these rockets that are seen being firing in Punjab at police stations and whatnot, they actually, with the help of the KGB, they were brought from Russia. So these are rockets. They're harmless. They're not Stinger missiles, but they were laid out they were brought to Delhi airport. They sat in the Delhi airport, and then they were taken to Punjab. And then the news all came out, and a few arrests was made. Some innocent people. They show the pictures of the rockets. So we put the whole thing out to in our report, and then we sent this report out to every member of U.S. Congress, where then Dr. Gurmeet Singh Aulik used this information to help convince the United States government's congressmen to issue statements against India, which they did. So the point here is, when the Indian government has set up their narrative, and this is one clear example how they have done it, the lessons for today is we immediately need to respond. Not only we need to respond, actually we need to preempt. We need to warn the world that we are warning you that within a month or 2 months or 3 months, you expect the Indian state to kill someone in Canada. You expect the Indian state to attack the mandir. You expect the Indian state to put some graffiti. You expect the Indian state to set fire to the consulate based on their historical track records. And that's what exactly in 1988, the Sikh Information consistently put out reports that, we believe the alternate, this is the other side of the story.
What I find fascinating, and I do refer our audience to our last podcast, where you told the extraordinary story of Operation Shanti, and of course this incredibly strategic move by the Soviet Union to march through Afghanistan, and the potential assassination of President Zia of Pakistan, effectively to link up the Soviet Union's empire with India and bring in that whole region under Soviet control. But what I did find particularly fascinating about that whole concept was this link with Afghanistan. The Soviet Union did, of course, occupy Afghanistan for many years, but there has been a very historic tie between India, the Brahmins, particularly of India, and Afghanistan. And Afghanistan has been used as really a second front against the Sikh community. For example, the Kabul bombing that happened a number of years ago. Could you talk us through the events of the Kabul bombing and India's involvement indirectly in that?
Yes, actually, just like the 1988 incident where we immediately reacted, you can see on this screen that on March 8, 2013, I put out a statement that we endorse the observations of the then Secretary Defense, U.S. Secretary of Defense, Chuck Hagel. Now, Chuck Hagel has said, India has always used Afghanistan as a second front, and India has over the years financed problems for Pakistan on that side. The tense, fragmented relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan has been there for many, many years. Now, I have warned in my statement that I have said that we endorse Chuck Hagel's observation that India is the culprit here, and whatever aid is going to give to Afghanistan is actually going to be used against the Sikhs. And I warn that India's involvement in Afghanistan, based on its relationship, based on its domestic false flag incidents against the Sikhs, whether it's the cowhead, whether it's the weapons, whether it's the Chitti Singhpura, based on that, we can safely tell you that we are going to be the number one victims of the Indian government's strategy in Afghanistan. And you can see my statement on the screen. Now, going back to this relationship between Afghanistan and India, it is a very extraordinary and very ever-changing relationships. The Brahmins are very, very smart in cultivating deceptions, in creating friction, using every opportunity they can to sow discontent and disharmony among all kinds of people. So going back to the USSR, we know the USSR came into Afghanistan in 1979, December, Christmas Eve. That's about the exact time when Indira Gandhi got the news that she has won the elections. So Indira Gandhi has a long-standing relationship with the Russians, dating back even with her father, who had a very staunch relationship with the Russians. Just yesterday, a very important conference was going on in Punjab. It was the All Indian Federation of Colleges, Universities, Teachers Organization, a big event, and their annual conference happened in Punjab. They invited the Vice Chancellor of the Tamil Nadu University as a guest speaker. He, in his speech, said, and this is his words, he's saying, had the ideals and the philosophies of Guru Granth Sahib been implemented. Now he's addressing the whole 26 states of India, and this happened just 3 days ago. He's saying, has the ideas of Guru Granth Sahib been implemented, India would have no doubt been a superpower by now. So this is a big endorsement on the ideas of Khalsa, and the Sikhs need to live up to these ideas. They need to practice this, need to work hard at these ideas. They cannot gloat and say, you know what, wow, it's about me. It's not about you. It's about the Guru's sacrifice. It's not about me. It's about the ways the Gurus laid out the ideas. And if we are there, then the world will like us. And people like Jawahar Nasan, who make this, the Vice Chancellor, who made this statement. So look at the opportunity that was lost to India as a result of this nexus between the USSR and the Brahmin family. How much, there are no toilets in India today. People are poor, people are hungry, compared to next door, that is the rising superpower. Indians, we would have been that story, and we would have been a whole different scenario today, for Sikhs and Hindus and Muslims and everybody. But alas, that was not to be. And Jawahar Nasan, correctly, an educated Tamil from the southern Indian states, after learning about the Sikhi, he said, this is what the India is missing. So this threat of being a superpower, empowering everybody, this threat is felt by the Brahmin family. This threat is a direct contradiction to the beliefs of the mind control system of the USSR, which has converted the communist movement into a people control business, and how to expand and bully at other people's expenses. So going back to the Sikh situation, so we were caught into this geopolitics situation, and Afghanistan has been a second front. Whatever weaknesses or problems Afghanistan is going on now, and the Kabul bombing, we pointed out in 2020 that what India is saying, that the Pakistani group is behind this bombing of the Gurdwara Gurhar Rai. So we pointed out in 2020 in the Kite fight, which you can see was released right here in Switzerland. In this book, it not only talks about the weapons and how they were smuggled, the details, the cowheads. This book raises very serious questions in 2020. This group that killed the Sikhs are very closely tied into India. They are known to the Indian intelligence, and this group has been involved in Sri Lanka bombing and killings of Christians in 2018. So we have followed this story, and just like the Chuck Hagel statement in 2013 and the 1988 pointing out of the weapons, again, we were in the forefront of letting the world know that there is some serious issues in this idea of the Sikhs being killed by pro-Pakistani groups. I'm not in favor of Pakistan. Pakistan had its own issues and its own interests. But nevertheless, in the case of the Sikhs in Kabul, is clearly the fingerprints of the Indian state. Now, this statement is endorsed. The findings of the issues we raised in the book has been confirmed and by the CIA in 2024 when Sarah Adams said that the Modi government paid $10 million to have Sikhs killed. The Harpreet Singh Happy PhD, he was brutally murdered in daylight, in the streets of in Pakistan, in Punjab. Same with the Paramjit Singh Panjwar. So all these Sikhs, now we know the name of the people who killed these people and who they linked to. And again, you can see when we were pointing out this thing, we had the Indian media speaking against Sikh Information Centre that the Haqqani group is behind this. They are controlled by the Indian state. But we contradicted all this in our book. And then the CIA now has endorsed and basically further, basically requiring the Sikhs to do a deeper homework, into all these murders and killings, and even the Sikhs who were killed in hospitals. That's a lot of going on, that these were not natural deaths. Avtar Singh Khanda's death is not a natural death. So same thing with other leaders that died in hospitals and all that. The Indian government's tentacles are very deep. So you see the proxy war in Afghanistan and the special ties to the Russians, and this whole thing has come to the forefront. And Mr. Jawahar Nasan has really endorsed all these teachings and findings and all the books and writings and all our concerns the Sikhs been sharing over decades is being endorsed by the most important voices in India. Now they're saying yes, the Sikhs' ideas are very powerful. They will help the world. They definitely will put India on the right path. And so this is you can say the genesis of the problem, the frictions, the plates that rub against each other, and the Kabul bombing. And the other thing that the Indian state did, and a lot of our leaders, you can say they are not our leaders, and this is a learning thing for the Sikh. Many Sikh leaders, they endorsed the Indian statements, the Indian government statements, that the Kabul bombing involved the killing of Hindus. The headlines were Sikhs were killed and Hindus were attacked. What ironic tragedy that is, when no Hindu was attacked. In fact, they were orchestrating the whole attacks. So now many people were calling for safeguarding the Hindus. Bring out the Sikh refugees, bring them out, let's save them. But the goal of the Indian state was to evacuate every citizen of Sikhs from Afghanistan, because the founders of the Hindutva, like Lala Hardayal, he has clearly stated in his finding, in his writing, Lala Hardayal said in 1925, he said, if Hindus want to protect themselves, they must conquer Afghanistan and the frontiers and convert all the mountain tribes. This is the only way the Hindu will be secured. And this is part of that strategy. And Sikhs have fallen into that trap and asking for the protection of Hindus. I'm not saying that Hindus have not been killed or they have not been targeted. We Sikhs will never endorse any human being being killed, Muslim, Hindus, or otherwise. But this is a clear-cut intelligence work of the Indian state. And many of these, I would say some of these are agent provocators who are further pushing the agenda of the Indian state. And that's where the Swiss youth and all the youth need to have a laser-pointed, a deep study. You can't trust who's on your right. You can't trust who's on your left. That's the way the Indian government has created the situation for the Sikhs and all the minorities of India, and it's becoming a global disease almost.
And I think actually that's a very interesting distinction, of course, when you talk about Hindus, very much as much a victim of many of these incidents as Sikhs. And I think it does point to something that we often talk about, that is this Brahmanical ruling elite of India who have ruled effectively or controlled the Indian population for a very, very long time now. And history has taught us that any ruling elite will sink to the most frightening levels to retain that control. And clearly what we've talked about today, and certainly in the past, is they have demonstrated that they really are prepared to undertake the most shocking operations. We haven't even talked about Air India of 1985, the bombing of Air India, for example. So they have demonstrated that the Brahmanical controllers of India have demonstrated that they are prepared to launch the most shocking operations to ensure that they retain control of India. So, Bhajan, as a final question, based on their track record, does it concern you, particularly now that the Khalistan movement is arguably winning this war now and they are reverting to increasingly desperate measures? Are you concerned about what may happen in the future, about what desperate measures, that they are getting increasingly desperate, what they may be capable of doing in the future?
Yes, I mean, the writings are on the wall. Whenever the Indian state is faced with pressure from the Sikhs and any allies that want to support the Sikhs, like the case of the pre-Kanaksha bombing, in Ecuador, they set up a Khalistan embassy. And the French government was in support of the idea of supporting Sikhs. The momentum, the global, and this is a Cold War scenario where Russia was in bed with India, and they were trying to dislodge the fight against the Russians' occupation of Afghanistan from Pakistan. In this context, so the Sikh movement was getting momentum, and how to stop this momentum? Well, do the bombing of the Air India. The moment you do such drastic bombing, everybody ran away from the Sikhs. The Indian state was very successful in achieving that goal. And that time, air terror, hijacking was a very serious issue in those days. Nobody could justify it, because if they endorsed the Sikhs or soft pedal the Sikhs, then the other hijackings and killings by other organizations, the Japanese terrorist organizations and many other organizations, that could be seen as a soft corner, and people would use that more and more. So in the case of the Air India hijacking, it's very clear that the Indian state, and who's helping the Indian state? The USSR, the masters of such events. India is not alone. And the survival of Russia depends on the survival of India. And they can ill afford to lose. So we are part of the global geopolitical Cold War development, which we might not have realized at that time, and we must realize that now, that nations do use people. Every nation can use you, and they can abuse you, and they can throw you away. So why should we be concerned? Recently, the artificial intelligence, they said that the Sikh ideas and the Sikh philosophies are a good thing to a rule of thumb for the whole earth, right? Now, Jawahar Nasan, the vice chancellor of the Tamil Nadu University, he clearly said that the solution lies in not the religious aspect. He said, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about the philosophy, the way of life, the thinking of the gurus. That is the savior to save India. And many other people in Tamil Nadu, Madhya Pradesh, Punjab, the Swiss kids, and other people are picking up on these ideas. Now, just like the time in pre the Kanaksha attack, suddenly everybody ran away from us. How to chase people away? Where the world is coming together and recognizing the Sikh ideals, the principles of Sikhi. Even the Congressman Tom McClintock, an ally of Trump, he said there is no religion more tuned to the Declaration of American Declaration of Independence than the Sikh religion. That's a huge endorsement. So Sikhs should not be going on a picnic and that, hey, you know what, we've been there. No, this is just a beginning of a very dangerous responsibility. We have to start behaving. We have to have our Gurdwaras start acting accordingly. That what is the world expecting from us based on the teachings of the gurus, based on the history of the gurus. And what would the Brahmin do? They might have more Kumbh Mela incidents where Sikhs are Hindus. They might create more frictions that certain Guru Granth Sahib and the Dasam Granth, they create a lot of frictions and many other avenues they have, and they have a controlled opposition where we feel that this opposition is actually Indian state opposition, but actually globally they are controlled by the Indian state. And we need to have a very sharp eagle eye to dig, to see very deeply into these challenges. And the youth should spend their brain today, hey, what we do with this goodness, the world warmth and goodness towards the Sikhs, should we go home and have a picnic and just have some pronti and have a good sleep? No, this is the time to wake up. How do we take care of our responsibility to the globe? But we have to start at home. So I do expect the Indian state to retaliate, and they are retaliating, creating frictions. They are masters at this. Long time ago, one of a very prominent Dalit, he was talking to me, and he told me that Mr. Bhinder, till the Sikhs understand that each Brahmin is an Oxford University unto himself, each Brahmin is a Cambridge University unto himself. And Brahmin means not only Brahmin, the people who think like the Brahmins. There doesn't have to be, anybody, who want to be opportunists and they want to oppress the human race. They want to oppress humanity, and they want to instead, how ironic, instead of being a superpower based on the ideals of Guru Granth Sahib, we cannot feed the country is poor. They are deprived. And that's what the Guru gave their lives for. Not for us to have a good time. It was for us to wake up, and it's no fun being a Sikh. I'm going to tell everybody, including myself. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else. I might be the worst guy here. But I think we owe something to the world, and we should take responsibility. And the number one responsibility is keep an eye on the enemy, where they're going to attack, how they're going to attack, and how not to let those attacks divide us. That's where the challenge of the Sikhs lies.
Indeed, a very salutary warning, but there we must leave it.
I want to add one last thing.
Yes, indeed.
To sum up the what India is capable of, I want to share this last slide. It's open secret. M.K. Dal wrote this book. He is the former joint director of the IB, and who is handpicked by Indira Gandhi to basically from 1980 to 1990s to target the Sikhs, globally. He was in Canada. He did a lot of work, and he is a key person in a lot of these happenings. All the false flag incidents in Canada, in India, along the Pakistan border. He is the man, if you read his history. He says the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi told him that he, Dar, was appointed as an IB director to carry out dirty jobs of the power center. He said, we expect you to do the dirty jobs, whether it's the cowheads, the airplane incidents, that we want you to do it. Indira Gandhi spelled it out to him. And he said, there is no way but to oblige the department and the government, even if the job is dirty and unlawful. He said, if I don't do it, they will kill me on a lonely road by attacking me with a truck, and they will kill your children. And that's what happens in India. And that's where the Sikhs need to begin their learnings.
Dirty and unlawful. I think that explains everything, Bhajan, but there we must leave it. But we will continue this discussion with Bhajan Singh Bhinder again soon. Bhajan, as always, it's been an absolute pleasure and extremely interesting. Thanks so much for joining us once again.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you for watching the Satluj TV podcast. We will see you next time.